All right, let's talk about one of the biggest things you'll ever do, buying a house. But you know what? Forget what you've seen on TV. We're going to pull back the curtain on the real journey, all the financial hurdles and sneaky little steps that can really make or break your dream of owning a home.
So let me just ask you, do you really, truly know what it costs to own a home? I'm not just talking about the price on the listing. That's just the starting gun. The real race is getting to the closing table. And what comes after is filled with financial curveballs most buyers just never see coming. So here's our game plan. We're going to break this whole thing down into 5 key stages. We'll start with getting your money right. Then we'll hit the pre-closing checklist. We'll walk you through closing day, expose those post-purchase surprises, and then, for some of you, we'll talk about making that switch from just an owner to a landlord. Okay, first up, the money. Before a bank even thinks about giving you a loan for an investment property, you've got to pass their test. And it's not just about you and your credit score. It's about whether the property itself is actually a smart move. Now, if you're using an FHA loan to buy a multifamily home, you're going to run into something called the Self-Sufficiency Test. It's actually pretty simple, but it's a huge deal. The question is, can the rent you'd collect cover the entire mortgage? This protects the bank, for sure, but honestly, it's a massive reality check for you too. So how does this whole test work? Well, it's less complicated than it sounds. First, the bank figures out the total potential rent from every single unit. Then, to be safe, they take 75% of that number, to account for times when a unit might be empty. That final number has to be more than or equal to your total monthly mortgage payment. If it is, boom, you're in.
Okay, so you've got your financing approved and your offer was accepted. Nice. But now a clock starts ticking. This is what we call the due diligence phase. It's your one chance to really dig in and inspect everything before this deal is locked in for good.
And your contract has these amazing little safety nets built right in. They're called contingencies. You can think of them as your get-out-of-jail-free cards. The inspection contingency lets you bail if you find some horrible problem. The financing one protects you if your loan falls apart. And then there's the appraisal contingency, which can be a secret weapon. So what happens if the bank sends an appraiser out and they say the house is worth less than you offered? This is where that contingency becomes so powerful. You can go right back to the seller with that lower appraisal and say, hey, let's talk about the price. Or you can just say, you know what, never mind, and walk away from the whole deal. Get your deposit back and avoid paying too much.
Another absolutely critical piece of your homework is the title search. I love this analogy. It really is like a background check, but for the house. It's this deep dive into all the public records to make 100% sure the person selling you the house actually has the right to sell it, and to find any weird debts or claims tied to the property. But here's the thing. A title search can only find what's officially on the record. What about all the stuff it can't find? Like, what if a signature was forged on a deed 30 years ago? Or some long-lost cousin pops up with a claim to the house? That's what title insurance is for. The search looks at the past. The insurance protects your future from the past.
All right, you've cleared every hurdle. You've done your homework. You are at the finish line, the closing table. This is it, the final 24-hour sprint before that house is officially yours. And there are just 2 huge steps left. First is the final walkthrough. This is not the time to be nice and quiet. Your job is to make sure the seller is actually gone, that any repairs you agreed on are finished, and that the house is in the exact same shape you expected it to be. You're hunting for any nasty last-minute surprises. And then you get to the closing table, and what you'll find is a mountain of paperwork. Seriously, you have to bring a whole stack of documents yourself. Proof of insurance, loan papers, your ID, and then get ready to sign your name over and over and over again. It can feel totally overwhelming, I get it, but just keep this in mind. Every single signature you make is one step closer to getting those keys. That pile of paper is the very last thing standing between you and your new home. And wow, when it's all done, it feels incredible. So, the keys are in your hands. You're a homeowner. Congratulations. The journey's over, right? Well, not quite. Now we get to the part with post-purchase surprises. And maybe the biggest one of all is about your property taxes, which work in a way that just blows most new homeowners' minds. So let's use Michigan's system as an example, because it's super clear. The number they use to figure out your tax bill is called the taxable value. And here's the key. It's capped. For the person who owns the home, it can only go up by a tiny bit each year, either inflation or 5%, whichever's less. This means people who've owned a home for a long, long time have a really low tax bill. For example, Let's say a home is actually worth $200,000, so its assessed value is $100,000. But because the last owner lived there forever, their taxable value was capped way down here at, say, 75 grand.
So, based on that lower number, their tax bill was a pretty reasonable $4,800 a year. And that's the number you probably saw on the real estate website. But here is the gotcha.
The second you buy that house, the law says that that cap is gone. When ownership transfers, the taxable value gets uncapped and it resets.
So the very next year, the taxable value shoots up to match the full assessed value. Let's say it's now $105,000. All of a sudden, your tax bill is nearly $2,000 higher than you planned for, and that is a brutal payment shock if you didn't budget for it.
And finally, if you bought a multi-unit property, your journey has another chapter, becoming a landlord. Your success here is really going to boil down to one thing: finding amazing tenants.
The trick is to have a system. Don't just go with a gut feeling. A really solid screening process is your best friend. I'm talking a detailed application, actually verifying their income, calling their old landlords, and running real background and credit checks. Being consistent and treating everyone the same protects you and your investment.
And that's the real story, isn't it? It's so much more than just picking out curtains. It's about passing financing tests, knowing your legal escape hatches, surviving mountains of paperwork, and bracing for things like tax hikes. Knowing all of this stuff ahead of time, that's what turns a nervous buyer into a confident, empowered owner.
So, now that you know about uncapped taxes and appraisal contingencies and all the rest, what's the first thing you're going to ask the next time you tour a property? Let me know. And thanks for tuning in.